Hello and welcome to Fat Black Woman Podcast. I am your host, Deanna Williams, and I believe this is my eighth episode, seventh or eighth episode of Fat Black Woman. And I want to talk about something that's very personal to me. I went back and forth as to whether or not I was going to do this on camera or if I was just going to do this audio. But since I put on my red lipstick, I figured now's I can just put it on video, and if I happen to tear up and look a mess and do the ugly cry, which I don't think I will, then y'all will just have to deal with it. But I wanted to talk to you today about my journey with depression. I spoke with my psychiatrist today, a lovely woman, black woman, which I was intentional about, whose name is Ava Gaiman Dooms, and I've been with her for about maybe a year and a half or so. And she's great. I highly recommend if anyone's looking for a psychiatrist in terms of medicine management, prescription management. She's great. But if not, then definitely for a therapist, there are a ton out there. One who used to treat me was Dr. Kimberly Campbell here in the DC area. But I say all this to say that I was having a conversation with Dr. Dooms, and I was explaining to her that I unexpectedly, based off of the past few years or so, I am in a happy or a more peaceful place than I had been in years past. I had suffered with depression for a while now. I would call it funks until I was diagnosed. And I think I started noticing that I was in a series of funks, maybe about 2009, 2008 or so. And, I just wouldn't want, with the exception of going to work, I wouldn't really leave the house. And I would just kind of be like, bleh. My friends would be like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I would be on board at first, and then I would just cancel. And, there would be those periods where I would just cry for no reason. And, I would be stuck on this whole thing like, what's my purpose in life? Even though I had a career in public relations and I enjoyed it, but I just felt like, wait, there was something more. And I felt very boring, and that I wasn't interesting to people, and I couldn't understand what it was. I mean, I wasn't physically ill or anything, but I just really couldn't understand what was going on. So I went to speak with my GP, and she suggested that I participate in I see a therapist, and with that participate in like a cognitive behavior study. And I went to see a therapist and did a battery of tests. It was a 2-day battery of tests where I had to bring in a friend who was questioned about me in terms of my moods, my behavior, my likes or my dislikes or whatever it is. And then I was brought in and questioned and so on and so forth. And after that battery of tests, the therapist explained that I suffer from depression and anxiety. And that was a huge weight off of my shoulder. But then I was kind of like, so now what? It's not really fixable. I remember speaking with my one of my dear friends' mother, Mama T, who was a therapist in Jacksonville, Florida, and she was saying that mental health, especially depression, is treatable. A lot of people don't know that mental health, in particular depression, is treatable, and they don't seek treatment for it, and then they just kind of stay in that depressed state. And when they feel that they can't get out of it, that's when they fixate or ideate on harming themselves. And I hadn't ever thought about harming myself at that point, but I just remember feeling like that desperate, desolate feeling. So anyway, I saw the therapist. She recommended back to my GP medication that I should be on antidepressants as well as anti-anxiety when needed. So started on my antidepressants, and it was quite helpful. I would have to say I was on Wellbutrin, and it was helpful. And throughout the years, I would have to adjust the medication, and I was okay. And then I would say that was 2013. So about 2017, I found that I was back in this funk and back in this rut. And there were contributors to that. One of that was my job, where I was experiencing racial discrimination. And, I've spoken about that before. It threw me for a loop in terms of like how to handle this situation, because in years past in my career, I was pretty confident and pretty self assured in terms of, who I was, what I brought to the table, what my abilities were, what my competencies were, as far as my career was concerned, as far as interacting with people were concerned. But I was being challenged at every turn in this huge organization. Um, and it really did throw me for a loop, and it contributed to my depression. So I saw my GP again, and I explained to her that I needed something else. And at the time, I I had asked to, in addition to the Wellbutrin that I was on, I had asked to be on Prozac. I had heard that Prozac would help, or fluoxetine would help with supporting the Wellbutrin, but also it would help with maintaining weight. Now, uh, I had always been a little chubby. I went through Weight Watchers. That's another segment or whatever. But I went through Weight Watchers, and I had lost some weight. And then I was going through this thing in 2017, and I had gained some weight. And the Prozac had helped in terms of losing weight. I had heard that from somebody who was also on Wellbutrin and Prozac, that they had lost a tremendous amount of weight. So I got on this Prozac. So I get on the Prozac, and I'm on this Wellbutrin, and it's helping in my depressed state, but then it just kind of quells my libido. Now, without getting too much into my business, or my personal business with my significant other, we had a very healthy sex life. And then the Prozac helped with the depression, but killed the libido, which then caused somewhat of a strain on our relationship. Now, the irony is that in a depressed state, you don't have much of a libido anyway, so it really didn't matter. So I was more so in my head like, listen, I just got to take care of what's going on mentally. And if you don't suffer from depression, I'm so happy for you. Um, but if you do, then you understand that it is so difficult to explain what you're feeling, because it's not a numbness. You are feeling something, but you don't know where it is. It is a physical feeling, but it's somewhere in your body. It's in your heart. It's an emptiness, but it's a throbbing of that emptiness. It's, I want to cry, but why do you want to cry? You can't explain that. It's, I want to be left alone. I want to be under the covers. But I want to be with people. It's, why do I feel this way? Why doesn't God love me? Why doesn't God like me? Why? It's a bunch of whys, and you don't really get the answer, and that's the rut. And then that's the episode, and then you'll come out of it and you're like, oh, great, I'm glad. And you literally are thanking God that you are out of this rut, because it's like, whew, it is a weight on your shoulders. And I can tell you that throughout my journey of depression, being on the medicine helps, and it helps to soften the blow, but you are still, that depression, that demon is still there. And over the past few years, just recently, I, where I knew that let me back up. I remember speaking to my therapist and explaining that I was on this medicine. She was asking me about the meds that I was taking because the the psychiatrist works on the medication. The therapist works on the emotions and the mental health part. And I explained to her, I was back, I'd up my dosage of whatever, and she was like, "Oh, do you have thoughts of hurting yourself or thoughts of suicide?" I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna say unaliving because that's stupid. And I said, no. I was like, well, I don't understand it. Why, if I'm on the medicine and I'm feeling good, why would I have thoughts of that? And she was like, because the medicine gives you the energy to carry it out. And I was like, wow, that is really interesting. And I understood it. I really did understand what that was. At first, I was like, wait, but that depression, that demon of depression is so powerful, and you feel so defeated and so desperate for an end to this hurt, this pain, this nothingness, that I got it. And there have been many, many times where I actually thought, okay, well, if I were to go, how would I do it? And I was never serious about it. I don't think, except for maybe one time. But I wasn't never serious about it. But I did put thought into it. Well, if I do this, then it might hurt. Or if I do this, then somebody might find me and then I'll just be, lamed, and I'll just be a vegetable and somebody will have to take care of me for the rest of my life. And that wouldn't be fair. And if I did this, it's going to make a mess and somebody's going to have to clean up. So these were the things that I was thinking about. But I was thinking about it, and I thought about the many, many people who actually went through with taking their own lives, and I felt horrible. I understood, and that Catholic school training where it's like, oh well, if you take your own life, then that's the ultimate sin. You're going to go to hell. I don't. I don't think that I couldn't be judgmental about that anymore because I knew what that felt like. I mean, and on the other side, where I was like, well, I knew I couldn't do it to myself. I couldn't take my own life. There were plenty of nights where I was like, please God, I don't want to wake up anymore. Just please just take me. Just please just take me because I can't do this anymore. I am nothing. You aren't giving me anything. And clearly that didn't happen because I'm here. But it was it is challenging, and thank God for God. um Thank God for family. Thank God for mental health workers, for mental health professionals, for mental health medication. I was very fortunate that I had a therapist who was very much a follower, is very much a follower of Jesus Christ. So we could have scientific conversations as well as conversations that involved my belief in God, and my questions about God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit and what that means to me, and how I can reconcile some of my questions. Um, she was a woman. She was a Black woman, so she could and did understand the things that I was going through in my life as a Black woman in corporate America, in a heterosexual relationship with my husband, um, in just in life, perimenopause, or was it menopause? I don't know. Perimenopause, even now menopause, with girlfriends. So there was that was very important to me. Side note, my very first therapist, I was in New York, and I had gotten this I gotten this therapist. He was in Chelsea, a white guy. I forget his name, not important. And I was like, you're my first therapist. And, traditionally, Black people don't really go to therapists. And he was more interested in me as a science project. Well, why don't Black people go to therapists? What is it? What do you do? Rather than helping me. And I was like, oh no, this is not gonna work. So I realized that this was stick with my own kind to a degree. But I say all that to say that there's not a separation between God and being a follower of Jesus and science and mental health. There's no separation. They come together. They work together. God created scientists. So if you are feeling this a weight that you can't explain, then I would highly recommend therapy. It's one of those things, I mean, from a vanity point of view, it's 55 minutes of you sitting in a room talking to someone about you, and they listen and they'll ask questions that help you explore why you may think or why you may feel a particular way. But, they won't use it against you. It won't come up in another conversation, out of context, in to be shared with other people. They're there specifically for you. But um, in that, in this time since, what I was explaining to my therapist, my psychiatrist today, was that I'm starting to feel a bit of a breakthrough in terms of finding or not feeling that desperation, not feeling that deserted. Pastor Howard John Wesley of the Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria did a sermon a few weeks ago. I can't remember the exact name of it, but he was referencing the Israelites in Babylon and that exile that they were experiencing. And sometimes, basically saying, sometimes you're in exile and you've got the why and the what and the how and the why and the why and the why. And, I, you know, I was up until a few weeks ago feeling very, very low and very despondent. And listening to Pastor Wesley's sermon, I realized that I was in exile. And I got so happy about that because there was a word for it. And I realized that it's where I'm supposed to be. And I don't like it, but it is where I'm supposed to be. God has not left me. And that helped to lift some of the weight of the depression um, that I was holding on to. And I am sorry, that's Jaja and another dog out there. But it helped to lift some of the weight of the depression and actually allowed me to step out on faith and be a little bit uncomfortable and open myself up and my life up to the unblinking eye of the camera. So, and I enjoy it. I like it. So, while I am still um, looking and sourcing for employment in my career, this has definitely given me something to look forward to and something to occupy my time in doing. I have to say, I am uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my God, what are you going to think? Or what are you not going to think? Or, what if nobody pays attention? But the good thing about social media is, I mean, forget the 15 minutes of fame. This is like 15 seconds of fame because it's so saturated with people that you forget who said what when 15 seconds, if not 15 milliseconds after you saw it. So this is, I guess, my own made up version of therapy for me. But um, I just want to say, as far as mental health is concerned, that if you feel like that there's something just ain't right. There are, I implore you to seek the help that you need, whether it is with a therapist. I know that sometimes if you don't have insurance, or even if you do have insurance and they don't take insurance, it can be a little pricey if perhaps there's, clergy or someone in the church. Or I know that there's like Better Health and Better Up and their career coaches, and, someone that can help you source that out, or, even start, even talk wherever, just to kind of get your thoughts and yourself together and to be heard and be seen. Um, because the way this world is right now, I mean, we are we're in a state, and if we don't get our minds right, forget our bodies, if we don't get our minds and our spirit and our hearts right, we are going to find ourselves not just ideating about taking our lives or taking somebody else's life, but actually executing that. And that's not cool. That's not something that I want us, nobody wants that, but that can't be our alternative. That can't be the only thing that we do to get through this. So that's just part of my little mental health journey. I don't know. I hope that you take something away from it. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight in terms of how I got here to Fat Black Woman. And I'll see you in the next episode. Peace and blessings.